Welcome everybody back to another day in the 31 days of Popcornween. Woo! Scary. Today I got a great movie for you guys. Hopefully another one that you guys didn't know existed. And if you did, hopefully you love it as much as I do. Today we're talking about 2017's The Void.
This isn't the end.
This film is the brainchild of two Canadian filmmakers who've a long history in working in practical effects. Stephen Konstanski and Jeremy Gillespie, who Gillespie actually worked on the floor below Guillermo del Toro while Guillermo del Toro was working on his unfinished, God, I hope one day we see the footage of, possible masterpiece, At the Mountains of Madness, based on H.P. Lovecraft's short story. Now, you can tell right off the bat from looking at this movie, those two guys are heavily influenced by Del Toro, and even more so by the works and such things as The Thing, and by H.P. Lovecraft himself. Gillespie was reported to hear Del Toro say at one point that God, he wanted something very Lovecraftian put on film finally. Maybe Gillespie saw this as a personal challenge, because him and Konstanski really put up a great candidate for maybe one of the most Lovecraftian things ever committed to film.
Action!
The fact that like a movie even gets made is a miracle.
Yes.
The Void shares a lot of, I guess you'd call it cinematic DNA with such movies as Saw. Not in so much that it's a horror movie or even the gore or anything like that, but the fact that it was a very grassroots type movie. And this is a super low budget movie that every cent of the budget is put on camera, and it looks damn good. The creature effects are amazing. Well, you know, that's no surprise when your directors is a visual effects guy, specifically a practical effects guy. And when they were coming up with the idea for the movie, Steven and Jeremy were talking back and forth, and they had these like different effects that Steven wanted to use. So Steven just kind of scraped together some things from the shop he was already working in, and they put together this little, not even a demo reel. It was more or less just showing the kind of creature horror that they wanted to feature in this movie. And once they filmed that and it started going around, people started hearing about it, and it got a little bit of buzz. People started talking about how incredible these effects were and how effective they were, how spooky and disturbing and creepy they were. And it got people interested. It got some backers interested. And over the course of a couple years, Jeremy and Steven managed to put together a few backers, and they found this old school that still had power going to it and wasn't like dilapidated or anything like that, but it was a unused school, and they not only turned it into the sets for the movie, but they also turned it into their production offices, which is really cool. I love low budget movie making. Like, once you get up into like the Hollywood stratosphere of, like, you know, you got 1,500 people on a crew, it kind of loses its magic. Because when it boils down to it, movies is really about a group of people coming together for this one vision. And in this case, it's Steven and Jeremy's vision. This movie has got a great cast of mostly unknown actors. The one you'll probably recognize the most, although you probably don't know his name, is Kenneth Welsh. This guy's been in everything from The Aviator to Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer, The Fog remake, The Exorcism of Emily Rose. This guy's been in everything for like 40 years. The main character is played by Canadian actor Aaron Poole. You may not recognize him, mainly because he's been in a lot of Canadian stuff, and a lot of that stuff doesn't get over on our side of the Maple line. But the fact this movie has a relatively unknown cast doesn't hinder it in the least bit. Matter of fact, I think it adds to it. Keeping the cast at a very low recognition rate helps you forget these are actors and kind of get into the world.
I need hands up front. Bring a stretcher.
The film begins in a small house in the country. A man and woman burst out of a door with a dark black triangle painted on it. Two figures emerge, blasting shotguns at him. The girl goes down, but the man escapes. The two figures walk up to the girl, douse her with gasoline, light a cigarette, and burn her alive. This is a hell of a fucking entrance for a movie. You have no idea immediately what the fuck is going on. You know these are good guys, bad guys. What the fuck is happening? It cuts to the sheriff, hanging out in his little cruiser, just talking some shit with the old dispatch lady. And he turns on his headlights, and he sees the man from the house crawling along the road. Thinks he's a drunk.
Hey, buddy, you know it's a little cold to be crawling all the way home.
Goes out there, tries to, help him out or whatever. They notice the guy is covered in blood. So he panics, grabs the guy, throws him in the back, and starts racing to the nearest hospital, which turns out to be one that is closing down. It only has a few people on staff, and even fewer in the lobby.
Oh. Hi.
Hospital only has a doctor, 2 nurses, and 1 intern. One of the nurses turns out to be the sheriff's ex-wife, and, well, that leads to some tension later. The man the sheriff found quickly has to be sedated because he is wildly outbursting. He is terrified of everything and screaming like a maniac. So they put him out. And we get introduced to the young intern who is hanging out with the only patient left in the hospital. A guy that was supposed to be moved to a different hospital but didn't end up getting the ride, I guess. Well, when things turn sour, it doesn't really go great for him.
Jesus.
You know, statistically, you're more likely to die in a hospital than anywhere else.
The only patients in the hospital are the guy in the room, Cliff, and a young pregnant woman, like maybe 19, 20, with her grandfather, who have been waiting in the waiting room to see the doctor when the sheriff bursts in with his, let's just call him a junkie. Things start turning sour when the sheriff finds the nurse Beverly, the older one, not the one he was married to, in Cliff's room, stabbing him in the face with a scalpel.
What? Jesus Christ.
And he discovers that she has been cutting off her as well. And he has to shoot her. As you would do, as anyone would do in that situation. You see a woman cutting her freaking face off. You got a gun. She comes at you with a scalpel. Come on, this guy was completely justified. Let's not get into the whole cops, cop violence or whatever. If you don't like this guy, I guess you could say he got his comeuppance pretty quickly when he goes to the bathroom from a panic attack and proceeds to have a massive seizure and blacks out on the floor. Well, now this is when the state trooper who was in pursuit of the junkie that the sheriff brought in shows up and begins to reprimand our sheriff for doing such a bang-up job at everything. And he finds out that the nurse killed a guy, and the state trooper is not happy. And apparently the state trooper knew our sheriff's dad and just really uses that to pour salt into the wound of this giant clusterfuck that is happening in this hospital. Sheriff Carter goes outside to his patrol car to call in Beverly's shooting and the death of Cliff, and sees a bunch of spooky cultists standing outside near the woods with these cool little triangle hoods on. Definitely not racist. I feel like these are a very inclusive death cult. I think they probably have people of all race, genders, and creeds. Probably even got a trans cultist in there somewhere, just keeping that blue hair tucked under that white hood. They're very open with their death, birth cult thing. When Sheriff Carter goes back inside, and they discover that Beverly's corpse has begun transforming into some sort of tentacle monster and is now attempting to eat the junkie that Sheriff Carter brought in. Now this is when the movie starts getting real kooky. The monster is disgusting. It's like rips of flesh and tentacles coming out. They're trying to do they're using like reverse footage and stuff where the tentacles are coming and they're trying to wrap up the guy, but he's like, no! They let the junkie go, and the sheriff and the state trooper decide it's time to get the hell out of here. The sheriff says they need to go get the cars, and right as they're about to leave, the two mysterious figures from the beginning of the movie race up to the front door holding a hunting rifle directly on the junkie. This spooks the junkie, and he grabs the pregnant girl and holds her hostage with a scalpel. The sheriff is quickly trying to, bring tensions down. In the midst of all this, the doctor, played by Kenneth Welsh, is trying to also calm him down, and that's when the junkie decides to slit the doctor's throat, and he falls to the ground and dies. And while no one's paying attention, the Beverly monster, a little tentacly thing, just creeps up on the state trooper, just nabs that bastard and runs. They quickly grab the junkie, James, while he's not paying attention and subdue him and handcuff him to one of the railings on the wall. And the sheriff grabs the two new guys who basically just did all the work for him, to go after the Beverly monster and the state trooper, and they do, and it's fucking horrifying. They get to this where the Beverly monster's at, and the tentacles are just going into the guy, just like burrowing into him and killing him and fucking ripping him to pieces. And so they get axes and they start chopping at the Beverly monster and eventually defeat it and set it on fire. Allison realizes something's up with the pregnant girl, so they quickly get her back to the office. Tension starts rising between the sheriff and these two mysterious figures who honestly just want to kill all of them and burn the place to the ground. But the silent one, the younger one, convinces him to perhaps try and get all these people out. They realize they don't have a whole lot of firepower other than some emergency axes and a couple pistols and a rifle that you use for hunting. Sheriff Carter tells Allison, stay put. They're gonna go get the shotgun from the cruiser, grab a bag of ammo, come right back, nobody move. Well, almost as soon as they leave, Allison realizes she doesn't have some of the medications that they need, so she runs downstairs to the basement to find some medical supplies. And while she's down there, she gets a jump scare, and boom, she's gone. Intercut with Allison going down to the basement is Sheriff and the two men heading out into the patrol car. They quickly realize the patrol car has been moved and it's 100 yards further away from the door than it was when the sheriff left it last. They quickly sneak up to the car, get the trunk open, and the sheriff starts going for the shotgun in the cab. That's when the siren lights, he bumps a switch of the siren lights to start coming on, and guess what? They're surrounded by cultists. So they quickly get the gun free and tuck tail for the for the door, I think shooting one or two cultists along the way. And when the sheriff returns, he learns that Allison's missing. And he learns that the doctor's body that they had covered with a sheet is also missing. Sheriff Carter and Vincent and Simon return from retrieving the shotgun and the ammunition to find Allison is missing. The intern Kim tells them that she went downstairs to get some medicine for the baby. Gotta take care of the baby. You know, going against exactly the thing that Sheriff Carter told her to do, which is stay fucking put. Women never listen. Or so this movie would have you believe. It's not realistic in any fashion. So, Carter and Vincent and Simon rush down to where the medical supply closet is in the basement, only to find the bag of medicine laying on the floor with no Allison in sight. They roam around the halls looking for her, and they hear a telephone ringing in the distance, and they follow it all the way to Dr. Powell's office. Carter answers the phone. Guess what? It's Dr. Powell. He's evil now! What? Powell tells him that just like Carter lost his baby, him and Allison lost their baby, that he too lost someone, his daughter. And then all this was actually a form of altruism to save people from having to ever lose anyone ever again. Because, you know, turning people into tentacle monsters is what, you know, one might consider altruistic, I guess. I don't know. I think this guy might have done one too many drug-filled sex orgies and just baked his mind right out of, you know, Sanityville. He's in Looneyville now. He was over in Sanityville. Now he went one area code over. He's got a new residence, and I'm going to peel my skin off and sacrifice someone's unborn baby to an extra-dimensional demon monster. You know, that town. So, while Carter is listening to all this garbage, Vincent, the older man, sees a little lockbox on the desk, and he opens it, and he starts seeing all these photographs of, like, these weird orgies, and then, like, body horror shit, and, like, the cultist robes. I guess they just were out there going, gang, gang, y'all! In their little robes. They doing the gang signs. Yo, hail Zophilus. You know, that kind of stuff. Carter loses his shit, as anyone would, demanding to know where Allison is. Where are you keeping Allison, you old faceless bastard? And the doctor kind of gives him a vague answer, but it's enough. He knows she's down in the basement somewhere. So he goes back upstairs and starts locking and loading, getting ready to go. So they know Dr. Powell has Allison. And they only know one person that knows anything about this occult. So they take all the Polaroids and they go and interrogate the junkie guy, James, in a very dramatic fashion, we'll say. They get the information out of him that Powell is trying to birth something onto our plane of existence. So Carter decides he's gonna go after his ex-wife. And he tells the junkie, guess what? You're coming with me. So him and the two guys set off to head down into the basement and find Allison. All the while, the intern Kim stays with the pregnant girl Maggie and her grandfather Ben. Sheriff Carter and Vincent and Simon, along with their junkie friend James, start heading down towards the basement. Intern Kim stays up top with the pregnant girl and her grandpa with a walkie-talkie, directing them as they go down the stairs, leading them to the morgue where the phone call was coming from. They travel through this really creepy, burnt-out nursery. The hospital had a fire several months previous, which is what eventually was causing it to be shut down. Now, as they travel through the basement, Kim's directions stop applying as where a morgue was supposed to be instead has another hallway. Kim claims this is impossible. That's where the door to the morgue is, but instead another corridor that leads to another set of stairs going further down. And this is where we get reunited with Allison. She's strapped to a operating table in what looks like the morgue. Dr. Powell is standing at the sink across from the room, pontificating about surgery while pulling off chunks of his skin with forceps. And he's talking about how he always wished that he could save someone beyond saving, and what weird paths that has led him to.
Why are you...
Quiet, please. This is uncharted territory. All these years, haven't you ever wished to save someone beyond saving? No matter what the cost? Well, losing Sarah destroyed me. But it also compelled me to find a solution.
Now we're getting to the part of the movie where the stakes start really getting raised and people start dying and crazy shit starts happening. So if you don't want the end of this movie spoiled, stop here, go watch the movie, come back, and then finish the review. I know you're not going to do that, but I'm just giving you fair warning. But still, I'm going to try to be as brief as I can while still being a bit comprehensive so that you can hear about all my favorite parts about this movie. So this is the part where Dr. Powell starts unfolding his grand plan to Allison and reveals to her that he's actually been trying this for some time, but most of his experiments have indeed failed. But they can't die. And he's been keeping them down here. And in fact, they're what caused the fire. And he also starts telling Allison, describing very vividly to Allison what happened to her baby. Actually, he didn't really have anything to do with it. Simple breach where the baby's umbilical cord gets wrapped around its neck and strangles it. It's terrible. Absolutely horrible. I probably called it the wrong name. Then Carter, gets back to Carter, and Vincent and Simon, and they come into this large room with a triangle drawn on the ground, and they start noticing body parts like hanging everywhere. Like, I'm talking about Texas Chainsaw Massacre level stuff. And James, the junkie, starts freaking out because obviously it's a room of horrors. Who wouldn't start freaking out? And they start hearing a meaty thud. And they turn the light and they see a armless man headbutting a spike over and over again in the middle of the room. And he turns and he looks at him and there's a giant hole in his head. These are Dr. Powell's failed experiments. And suddenly zombies and all kinds of disgusting monsters burst out of everywhere and start attacking everybody. Simon starts plugging away at their heads with a shotgun. James freaks out. Vincent and the sheriff try to stave him off the best they can with the axes. And then this one very disturbing contortionist guy in a suit steals James and kills him. And in the behind the scenes documentary that I've referenced a couple times in this video, I believe it's called Nightmare Logic. Great behind the scenes documentary. If you like this movie, check it out. Links down in the description. They talk about the guy who they hired for this. They put out a call for body movement performers, and they found this weird guy that could pop his shoulders and stuff out of place and walk all crazy. Really, just all the while this is happening, upstairs with Kim and Maggie and Ben, things are getting a little more hairy with Maggie. She's starting to have severe pains in her stomach again, and it's only increasing. When Kim pulls back the blanket, she discovers Maggie has a lap full of blood, and her grandfather urges Kim to do an emergency cesarean section. Well, Kim's just an intern. She don't know how to do this shit, so she pulls out a medical book and starts quickly looking for how to cesarean section, and she's like shaking with a scalpel in her hand, and she freaks out, and some crashing starts happening outside. The cultists are trying to get in. The blood is boiling. The fucking water is overflowing. Steam is coming out of the top of the pot of this movie. And things are heating up. And just as Ben's about to slap some sense into her, his throat gets slashed and he bleeds out and falls to his death. And behind him, well, stands a very scary looking manic Maggie. Like she's full-blown evil pregnant lady, like Joker face, holding a scalpel, saying, "This only matters." You find out that her baby actually might be the doctor's baby. That's not weird at all. And, of course, Kim freaks the fuck out, grabs an axe, and tells her, "Get the fuck away from me!" And as she looks over into the office, she sees that there are cultists standing at the door. And evil Maggie gleefully skips away with them to go be with her husband, doctor? Yeah, that's what happens. Vincent gets lured away from the room of horrors by the ghost of his wife, who leads him into a vision of his home. Simon follows him in. Something's wrong with Vincent. He turns on Simon and attacks him. Tries to kill him. Simon overpowers him and snaps him out of it, bringing them harshly back to the reality of the gory and disturbing basement they actually are inhabiting. Sheriff Carter travels on the hallway and eventually comes to the door. The door he saw in his visions. The door he really fears. Hoping, though, that his wife is still safe behind it. Unfortunately, though, when he opens it, he finds a fountain of tentacles, is the best way I can put it. It's just tentacles coming out of a woman's body just everywhere. The body's barely even there anymore. And Sheriff Carter is mortified and horrified and disgusted. But he's more disgusted because he knows now what he has to do. He's got to end her suffering. So he takes his axe and he chops her into pieces. It's one hell of a divorce. Now, it's not really clear how Sheriff Carter finds his way from the operating room to what the production staff called the temple, the final set piece of the movie. Built in a small gymnasium, actually, in that old abandoned school. They added all the concrete pillars and things, put the big triangle, and it's quite an impressive set. It really gives this movie an extra level of production value, be able to have a space that big, that is your sound stage. It really gives it some extra dollar signs next to that budget, you know what I mean? At least when it comes to what you see on the screen. Daniel finds his way, Sheriff Carter finds his way to the temple, and he sees the outline of the triangle glowing on the wall, and he sees all these gurneys with bodies covered up. Cultists start circling around Sheriff Carter before he even realized what happened. And Dr. Powell tells him that he's going to be a part of it too. But there's something he's got to do first.
I spent my life resisting death. I'll have just need one final thing.
And that's when gets the old stick in the back from one of the little cultists that snuck up on him, little ninja cultists. But that's what those robes are. It's not cult robes, it's ninja robes. Even though white kind of stands out in a dark room. He sees Maggie show up and she's kneeling before Dr. Powell, and he's saying all this shit about how, you know, she's gonna be the portal for the rebirth of his daughter. So Dr. Powell's kneeling in front of the triangle, and it's become this triangle of blinding white light. And he's like chanting at it with all these like throat singing shit. And he gets up and he turns around and he puts his hand on Maggie's head and he goes, "Make this bitch the vessel for my daughter, yo." And she gets a vision of horrifying shit. She starts screaming and she starts, you know, flailing around the ground and falling back. She bumps up against the gurney where the sheriff fell after he got stabbed. And suddenly her stomach starts punching and a monster emerges from her stomach on the other side of the gurney. The sheriff just watching her face as this thing's ripping out from inside of her, killing her. And then it starts walking around and its umbilical cord is dragging Maggie's body with it. Its first instinct is to go for the sheriff. But fortunately for him, Vincent and Simon show up and put a shotgun shell right into the side of its head, which immediately pisses it off. And it starts chasing Simon and Vincent. And it pins down Vincent and manages to fill his stomach with tentacles. But not before Vincent can douse himself in gasoline. And Simon, unfortunately, has to be the one to light the road flare and throw it at him, lighting both of them on fire. With his father dead and a on-fire fetus monster chasing him, Simon escapes to the air ducts and tries to get out of the basement. Meanwhile, Sheriff Carter, still at the temple with Dr. Powell, decides, you know what? You know how to solve this problem? Fire axe. So he grabs a fire axe and goes to kill the already dead Dr. Powell, and instead gets caught by the throat. And well, I mean, he did manage to get an axe in the guy's shoulder, but it didn't really do much. Dr. Powell, you know, starts doing his whole cult cosmic horror speech. Got Sheriff by the throat. The sheriff goes, you know what? I'm tired of your shit. So he tackles the doctor through the triangle into the other dimension, and it seals the triangle shut. And immediately the entire basement starts quaking. Simon's running, still being chased by this feast monster thing. Gets down this hallway, the hallway starts closing, which, check out the behind the scenes. There's a really cool behind the scenes little section on how they made that hallway start shrinking. It was all in camera, walls on wheels, on piano hinges, every person on the crew getting in there, shrinking that thing. By the end of it, they said everybody was covered in blood and guts and having the best time of their life. Sounds like the greatest time ever. A lot of hard, grueling days that resulted in something I think is pretty damn good. Simon escapes the basement just as the hallway closes, sealing the secret basement away, almost as if it was never there in the first place. He goes upstairs, all the gore and the death that happened upstairs is all still there. He finds Kim locked away in a closet, who tries to kill him. Thankfully she doesn't. They survive and get out of there. But then the movie cuts to a completely different world, a dark world with spikes reaching up to the sky and a large pyramid descending from the clouds. And there in this black desert stands Sheriff Carter, and Allison. And that's where the movie ends. The abyss opened up and swallowed these people. The only happy endings really for Simon and Kim. There's no happy ending for Sheriff Carter, for Allison. But maybe the doctor was right. Maybe death isn't what we think. Maybe death is just a doorway to another place, to another level of existence. As Dr. Powell called it, a cocoon. Now, if you liked what I told you about this movie, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and make sure you go check out all our other videos. This is day 7, so there's 6 more videos from before this one that you can check out, and check out some movies that we recommend this Halloween season for our 31 days of Popcornween. I'm Dr. Till. Thank you for hanging out with me. I hope you enjoy this, and I hope you enjoy The Void. It's a great fucking horror movie. It's got everything, and it was made with so much love and so much creativity under pressure. This movie at least deserves a view for the amount of hard work that went into this to make something that I hope gets remembered more in the future. I feel like this is a movie that kind of got lost under the radar. It got talked about for about 5 minutes, and I forgot. Part of this movie was funded through crowdfunding, which is something you really only hear about when it comes to comic books these days. But I've never seen anything of this quality from a crowdfunded film. I mean, Terrifier is crowdfunded, and, well, we'll talk about that a different day. But thank you guys again for watching. We hope you enjoyed this. Check us out tomorrow for another day of 31 Days of Popcornween. I think Ken's doing Boogie Nights? I don't know. I've never seen it. Is that a horror movie? Oh well, we'll see you guys tomorrow. You have a great night and enjoy your Halloween season.